Hello, and welcome to Courageously You with Martha. I am Martha Davis Alexander, your host. I am a retired attorney, an intuitive energy healer, and a F.I.X code practitioner, as well as a coach. And I am so excited today because I am bringing you, we are on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, by the way, #1 internet talk radio show and TV show. I am really excited today because we're talking about a subject that is near and dear to my heart, and kind of it's I have two sides of the coin. Sometimes I love it, sometimes I hate it. Being accountable, taking the courage to be accountable, with my guest Rusti Lehay. Hey Rusty, thanks for being on my show. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for the welcome, Martha. Yeah, it's good to be here. I know what you're saying about sometimes you like it and sometimes you don't.
I hate it. So I want you guys to know that Rusti is a speaker and an international award-winning writer and best-selling author. She also is an editor, a global editor. She coaches people on how to write, and she gives you a safe space to have that creative mind, knowing that it's a process. And that's one of the things that I love about Rusti. So we're going to talk all about accountability today. Rusti, tell me about accountability. What brought you to this topic today?
Oh, after failing at serial monogamy several times, more times than maybe what I might want to admit. Okay, I'll admit it, 7. I realized that I was the common denominator. And it still took me a while to really ferret out all those ways that I attracted each relationship into my life, and the learning that I derived from each one in the hindsight window is priceless. Going through it, not so priceless.
Totally. Hindsight is always 2020, right? You can see so much clearer looking back than you can now. So tell me how you weave, accountability into that, right? Holding yourself accountable for your stuff, but tell us more about that.
Well, my mother had done serial monogamy big before it was even a term. And the thing is that she outlived all of the men in her life, and I left them all except one, the last one, when I started to do my own internal work. And it wasn't easy. There was a lot of gnashing of teeth. My sister, who's a mind, body, emotional healer coach, held my feet to the fire and said, "You're going to learn it. You're going to learn it." And putting the pieces together on how I attracted things into my life. I attracted certain types of men, and I attracted the same kind of men that my mother did, almost in the same order.
Wow.
And it's like we repeat things, and the healing can go up the generations, not just down. And so when we find ourselves being like our mother, which all women kind of don't like to hear now and then, it takes some internal digging and excavating that is not fun, but the freedom on the other side of it. And I think the thing that really switched the pendulum for me so that it could quit swinging wildly from side to side and kind of land somewhere in the middle, where the capital T truth and capital A accountability is seeing Tom Bilyeu, a talk show host that I really like, his t-shirt, "Everything is my fault." And it would irritate people to see that. And I know what he was talking about, because I used to have an Erica Young quote at the bottom of all my emails when I was doing a newsletter for the Stroll of Poets Society. And some people absolutely hated it and begged me to change. And I said, "Does it bother you? Well, then what is that telling you that it bothers you?" The quote is, "Take control of your own life. A terrible thing happens. No one to blame." Even though I had that there, I still hadn't absorbed it. But putting that together with "everything is my fault." Now, before people get upset with me, let me explain what I think I take that to be my personal road to freedom is that it's so easy to point the finger outside and be a victim. But when we drop that victim mentality, and maybe we see this might work for some people, it might not work for people's belief systems, but if we see that we have a soul contract, and we signed a soul contract when we were coming here for this human, experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And I might have signed up to learn perseverance, to learn forgiveness, to learn accountability, even when it's not fun.
Yeah.
What if that was the case? And then combine that with the hindsight window. Because one time in my writing class, I was teaching the same writing class for about 9 years, the same people, pretty much the same core group of people came. And they were amazed at how I could remember book titles and movie titles and lines and quotes and things from their stories that they'd written the very first class I taught to then. And they said, "You have such a good memory." And I said, "There's a reason for that." "Oh, what? Do you really want to know?" And now they knew me by now, and they knew that, I would pretty much speak uncensored. And a few of them nodded their heads that were not quite so, seasoned with me. And a few of them were like, oh no, wait, we don't need to know now. I said, "Do you really want to know?" And they were still nodding their heads, some of them more tentatively. I said, "That's because when I was being molested as a child by 4 different men, I practiced memorization games in my head."
Oh.
And now the hindsight window is it makes me an excellent editor because I can say to somebody, "You use this thought and this happening, this event on page 48 or 49, but it's on the left-hand side top," and they can, "No, I didn't." And I say, "Yeah, you did. We just have to decide where it serves your audience and your strategic objectives better, or whether we use a tiny little bit of it here to foreshadow to the later part, or we do a callback and use a tiny little bit here and call back to it there." There's no problem using something twice in a nonfiction book if you use it strategically. And so that memory serves me and gives me a top level skill that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Now, I didn't say, here, I'm a victim.
No, you didn't. No, and I was, it's you're not in victim mode. You're claiming your victory over that by saying, this is what I did, and this is how it now serves me. I totally see that. And I totally appreciate that there is a skill that came out of something so horrendous.
Yes, there is. And the biggest thing where I need courage these days is that I think that my son is going to be my best and possibly final teacher on what it's like to hold my own and stand my ground in a healthy, loving, boundaried way, because he's off the rails in negativity. And he doesn't see that that's a choice. And he is a victim of everything. He's a victim of the truck that refuses to be fixed. He's a victim of, the chickens that he's supposed to take care of at my sister's farm. And his negativity is palpable. And he recently said, and this is where we have several wake-up moments in our life, right? You can probably count a few of those really big epiphany.
Absolutely.
When he said about 2 weeks ago that he admired one of the men that I was in relationship with, that was the one that was the most controlling and covert. I can deal with, overt type like control. What? Go away, But the covert was like my mother's style. And this man was like that. And when my son said that he kind of admired him, and I'm seeing now the similarities between the two of them and what I exposed my son to with that relationship, and how he's adopted a lot of those traits that I wouldn't tolerate in an intimate relationship. Why am I tolerating them in my son?
Wow, really powerful question. Really powerful question. And I think it's harder with kids, right? Because there are things that sometimes I tolerate with my kids that no one on planet Earth or any other planet, right? Nobody ever could do, but somehow my children slide on it. And that's on me. That's me. That is 100% me not keeping my boundaries, right? That's not me I'm not a victim of it. I choose. And it's harder for me to be accountable holding those boundaries with my kids, which they very well know, right? They're 22, 21, and 19. They know, right? They know who to play. It is harder with your kids. It really is.
No, and he's not so much of a kid. He just turned 40 last November. And am I doing him a disservice by, letting him get away with stuff that I wouldn't let an intimate partner get away with? How will he survive after I'm dead and gone? Because that's going to happen. I will die one day. And he blew his father's inheritance by withdrawing from the world. And he has this awesome situation here where he can withdraw from the world. He wants to be a misanthrope. Okay, that's not the goal that I would want for my son. But if he can find some degree of happiness and do that, but not at the expense of everybody else's peace. There is the cycle of abuse where he has a little blow up and he's really negative. And then there's that part where it's like kind of honeymooning, where the guy brings the flowers after he beats his wife. It's very similar. And he doesn't see it. And
but you see it.
Yeah, I see it. And if I die and he has still not learned these lessons, then I'm leaving somebody else the mess too. And maybe he might not be able to learn it here. He might have to go elsewhere and learn that he is the common denominator. I had to learn the hard way that I was the common denominator. But I so wish that he could learn by reflection. Confucius says there are 3 ways to gain wisdom. The noblest is by reflection. And he is a deep thinker. He's so intelligent. And the second way to learn wisdom is by imitation, which is the easiest. Mm-hmm. And the third way is by experience, which is the bitterest.
I can see all of those.
Yeah.
I have learned in all of those. Each of those ways, right?
Which one?
We've all learned, right?
Which one do you treasure? Which one do you treasure the most if you're looking back?
The self-reflection always. Yeah. That looking within always, right? That particularly for the last, I'm 61, so since I was about 58 or so, really that deep, why am I triggered? Why does that bother me? Why am I volatile, right? Why do those things happen? Why do I allow those things to happen? Why I'm in control? Why am I not? Right. And really taking the time to go in and figure it out. I mean, it's at 58, 60, can't blame your parents anymore. That gig ended I'm going to say about 15, right? You're smart enough to figure out your own shit and start taking action and accountability for your actions. And start figure it out.
Yeah. Have you ever seen that sign that says teenagers leave home while you still know everything? And then when they're 20, it's like, oh, mom was pretty wise. And then at 30, really, she's a lot wiser than I thought she was.
Yeah, that's Mark Twain. Mark Twain had that quote, right?
Yeah,
when I was a child of 7, I thought my father was an idiot. When I became a child of 14, I knew way more than he did. When I became a man of 21, I wondered how he'd gotten so smart in 7 years.
Yeah, right? I know. Mark Twain is great, isn't he?
I'm like, yep.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Yeah. So where do you start with accountability, Rusti?
Well, for me as a writer, it starts in the pages of my journal. I haven't wanted to face this. And I kept on wanting to give them another chance. Like you said earlier, the kids, they can slide where other people wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
And I kept on seeing these little glimmers of hope. But when I started writing in my journal to see that my hope went up, and then he had a little temper tantrum wanting to break something, went down. Last summer, he kicked a chicken when he was angry.
Ooh.
My hopes were dashed even lower. And then he did really well for a long time. My hopes start to climb back up. And when you realize that there's a cycle, there's a really hard poster in a Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada women's shelter. The first time he hits you, it's his fault. The second time he hits you, it's your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard. And so when we start to see the cycle, and if we can step out of the cycle and look at it from a distance, which my journal helps me do, I can see that, okay, there I was really hoping and hopeful, and there I was. And here I go up again, and now I'm on eggshells, because there's only a short little honeymoon period, and then you're on eggshells. When's the next blow up? It's like there was an experiment with a whole bunch of people in a room and a gong, and they would bang the gong on regular intervals, and everybody could cope with that because they knew when the next strike of the gong was going to be. But everybody's stress levels went whoosh, through the roof when the gong would happen intermittently.
Oh.
And so those
you're waiting for it, right?
Yeah.
That sense of expectation, that sense of when is that other shoe going to fall, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a hard one.
Not pleasant at all to live on that edge of stress. And stress is the killer more than anything else. I mean, aging is not optional, but feeling old is a choice, so, but that stress, that's.
So you've journaled, right? So we'll continue to use this example if that's okay with you. You've journaled, you know where it is. Mm-hmm. So now you're kind of at that choice point, right? You get to choose now how you step forward with the knowledge that you have. And that's kind of where accountability comes in, right? Mm-hmm. So is your next step setting your boundaries? Is your next step deciding who you want to be? What's your next step in this?
My next step is to be honest, because that's where I wasn't. I went back to my son's father about 12 years ago. We had been divorced since 1987, and I apologized to him. He was not able to hear the apology, and I just apologized about 5 hours straight. I just said it in different ways. The broken record technique, I'm sure you know that one, in difficult conversations, and say it differently and differently. And his argument was, your family did all your thinking for you. You didn't do your own thinking, and they destroyed our marriage. And I said, I can see why that's your truth, because I never let you know I had thoughts in my head. I never let you know that I disagreed with anything, because my mother was a ranter and a raver and a yeller, and I'd promised myself to never be that. So I robbed you of the real me, of knowing who I was, because I was so afraid and gun shy of conflict that I was always being nice, nice, nice. And you know what? When you're nice, 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 and you've got boiling feelings inside, that's not nice. That's not honest. That's not accountability, that's for sure. And so I apologized until I knew that I had done my piece. Our son sat on the deck crying, watching us do this back and forth. But at that point, I was doing it for him. I'd done it. I'd been accountable with him then, because out of all the men I've tried relationships with, Martha, he was the one that I would take back. Because we traveled well, we read books together, we discussed things, the music was so good. We both played guitar and sang, and the harmony was fabulous, better than sex, because I was still damaged that way too. Yeah. I hadn't healed from childhood experiences, and I brought that into the bedroom. That takes huge accountability too, because so many women, this is one of my passionate topics, so many women, when we do not heal, we hold the fathers of our children accountable for our childhood wounds, and our children suffer. And we suffer because we don't take that chance to heal, and we make those men suffer.
That is really a profound thought, and I'm going to think on that while we go to a brief commercial break. Guys, you don't want to miss this, so make sure you come back with us. This is Courageously You with Martha. I'm Martha Davis Alexander, my guest Rusti Lehay, and you are on the Going Solo Network, WGSN-DB. So we'll be right back after these really short messages. Don't leave us. We'll be right back. Oh my goodness, welcome back. This is Courageously You with Martha. I'm Martha Davis Alexander, your host. I am a certified F.I.X code practitioner, an energy healer, coach, all that stuff, whatever. And my guest, Rusti Lehay, is here with us. She is a speaker and an international award-winning writer and best-selling author and a writing coach and a global editor. And we're talking about accountability. And we're talking about taking accountability for your own stuff, right? Your own part in your life, in what goes right, in what goes wrong. All of that, right? It starts and ends with you. It is all choices that you have made or allowed to be made. And that it's all about having the courage to be accountable. And Rusti was just telling us about saying that she was sorry to her son's father and how that went. And yet it's such an important part of healing to take responsibility for your share of what happened and to say that, right? To admit it and say, this is mine, I own this. Right? Whether they can hear it or not, it is important to say.
Exactly, Martha. And there is that part of us that wants to, not show our vulnerable side because, that's evolutionary wired in to protect ourselves. But there's so much freedom and power in vulnerability and authenticity that we don't have to wear a mask anymore. And we can look at ourselves and say, wow, I attracted that, or I contributed to that downfall. And now I know how to do it differently. And when we're triggered, like you were saying earlier about triggers, right? When we're triggered, it's our responsibility to go, somebody must need practice pushing that button. And the other side of the practice, my side of the practice, is to remove that button. I need some practice on removing that button so that I'm not triggered there anymore.
Right. To know what your trigger is and to be able to say, oh, no, I don't choose that as a trigger. That's not going to, right. And a lot of that is old emotional baggage that we
Mhm.
can deal with in any number of ways. Journaling is one way, and that's self-reflection, right? And then the F.I.X code is another way to get rid of that emotional baggage. But
Mm.
there are so many ways, right? There's so many roads to the end, but the first
Mhm.
step is always looking at what your part of something is.
Yeah, because we're part of every dynamic. It's all in balance. It's like we're perfectly paired up. Like there was this when I was twice the age of when I left my son's father. I entered into a business relationship with a man that was very much like my. I don't call him my ex-husband because he's never going to be the ex-father of my son.
I
So
understand that.
very much the personality of my son's father. And at 27, when I was leaving him, one of the reasons I left him was when I fell on my wrist carrying my son up the stairs when he pushed me. And that's my writing hand, my dominant hand. And all of a sudden, I couldn't reach for the salt. I couldn't hold a fork. I barely brush my teeth with my non dominant hand. And I worked with I suspect this might be similar to what you do. I worked with a German new medicine practitioner who helped me realize that I was at a perfect anniversary spot for this code to come up. And this man was the perfect um, type replica of my son's father. And as soon as I realized all that, and I could undo some of the ways that I disappeared from my son's father and talk directly to this man, my wrist, all of a sudden it's fine. I can dance with it. I can do push-ups and chin-ups. And it was almost that instant. The pain was gone. But this was a reminder of that time when I was 27 and all of a sudden I'm 54. The universe has given me this other perfect learning opportunity. When those learning opportunities come, this is more of a brick. When they come, sometimes they're a feather. I had a previous employer that was the same personality as my son's father, and I never stood up to her. That was the feather because she was still very pleasant. I just always felt hard done by. And so that was the feather saying, hey, you can learn this lesson. And then this man comes along, and it was a whole lot more painful, my wrist, my livelihood, because it was a poetic literary type like venture that could have been great, absolutely fantastic, phenomenal, life-changing. I screwed it up because I didn't do the healing. But when I did the emotional healing after the relationship broke down with him, my wrist gone. That was a brick. Some of us wait for the damn bus to crash in.
Amen. Amen, man. You're totally right. You're
And
totally right.
this is fate giving us a chance to learn our lessons early. But this is where also I like to talk about fate and free will, that that they work well together because fate, we signed up for these soul experiences,
Absolutely.
and free will is we can learn the lesson when it's a feather, a brick, or a bus, and it's our choice. Or we can choose to not learn them at all and have to repeat those lessons again, which I've told my son, if you do not deal with the anger that you have at your father, and if you do not find a way to let it go, you are only going to repeat these lessons in the next lifetime.
Does he want to change that though? Does he want to deal with it?
Not so far, because the recent tantrum that he had yesterday, when it was like things were kind of looking up on Tuesday, and then yesterday I walked by him and he said, Corby made this box and I just wish I could just smash it. And he said, I'm not in a good space right now. And I went, okay, and I walk on. So what he's really angry at is that he has not ever followed through on his dream. He's let his father dictate that you couldn't be this, you couldn't be that, you couldn't be this, you couldn't be that. And so he's really angry at himself for not standing up to his father and saying, well, hell yes, I can. And I've shown him that it's most possible. And sometimes, even if the even if the reason, or we look at the foundation of what caused a person to do something to us, we make a meaning out of that. If we look at what might possibly have led them to do that, and they're no longer around for us to check it out, but if it eases the pain in us, then grab onto it and hold it. So I suggested to my son that it could be that his father said to him all the time, you can't be this, you can't be this, you can't be this. because he had so much pain in his own life from not being able to follow his own dreams that he wanted to protect you from dream killing society, culture, and all that sort of stuff. Because why do people tell their kids, well, you can't make a living off writing? Yes, I can. You can't make a living off, singing or acting.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Why? Because they're afraid that their child is not going to have anything solid to stand on when they're not there to take care of them. Or, why the international tax lawyer was raised by poverty-stricken parents and she wanted to be an artist all her life. But she went for the next best creative thing and became an international tax lawyer. That's creative, right?
There is nothing creative. Well, there is some creation, right, in law. I mean, you get to create articles or arguments or whatever. But
Right.
having been a lawyer, not an international tax lawyer. No. That was above my pay grade, and not a choice I would ever make, right? But that is like the antithesis of an artist, right?
Yeah, so she did that because her parents were worried and she was taking care of their fears. What if, because my son's father went bankrupt at an early age, he also loved, his first love was a woman from the other side of the tracks. Classic West Side Story. And the father busted that up. And so he's wounded there. And then when he does get a business going and his first wife and him are volatile together and the business fails and bankruptcy, then he's got another failure and another wound. And he was 15 years older than me, so he's still tied to the patriarchal way of thinking by the umbilical cord, not able to go get therapy. Do you know that it's easier for men to tell their friends that they are HIV positive than to say they're depressed?
Really?
Yes, really. Huh. It's incredible. I listened to that in a book talking about telomeres and the stress that we go through when we're, this or that. And it was incredible. It's easier for men to say that they're HIV positive or that they're gay than to tell a close friend that they're depressed. So my son's father, what if he was trying in his own inappropriate, ineffectual, and hurtful ways to protect our son from disappointments that he had himself experienced?
Yeah.
Maybe
could be.
And
if you believe, right, which I am a firm believer that most people, particularly like my parents, don't do something intentionally to harm me or hurt me or keep me down or in any way ruin my dreams, right? They're doing the best they can supporting what I want, right? I was told I really wanted to be an oceanographer, Rusty. That is very few people know that. I wanted to be an oceanographer. I love the ocean. I love being on the ocean. You can give me a big wave. I don't get seasick. I absolutely, there's nothing I don't love about it. And I was told fairly young by, I won't name who it was. It was a woman in my life who said, you can't be a scientist. You don't even like science. You're a girl. And so, I mean, it was the 60s. Let's be serious. It was the 60s. Yeah. And I went, oh, I can't be an oceanographer. Right. So, but I didn't want to be a ballerina or a Barbie doll or, right. So I became a lawyer. I don't know. But they don't seem quite somehow to equate. Right. It's just an interesting, right? That she didn't say it to hurt me or to steer something wrong. And in fact, I had a seizure disorder. And so I couldn't have dived, could have still been out on the boat, but I couldn't have been the diver. But still, right? It wasn't, she didn't do it maliciously or to ruin my dreams or to tell me, that just, she believed, right? Science
was a product of her times, right?
Yeah, totally a product of her times. And that's okay, right? It was my choice not to pursue it. It was my choice to say, oh, okay, right? I could have, I was a pretty feisty little thing. I could have said, I'll do it my way. right? I'd been saying that since I was 18 months old. I think I'll do it my way, right? I could have said that. Because I'm a strong-willed person. I don't bend that easily. So that was a choice that I made in that moment to listen to that. Right?
Right.
But she didn't do it. The point was, people don't do things maliciously. They do the best they can. And our job is to see it through the eyes of love, see it through the eyes of what can I learn? What can I take from this moment and learn, right? What is it that I can do with this?
Yeah, exactly.
The information, the skill, the event, whatever it is, right? What's the old making a silk purse out of a sow's ear, right?
Yeah.
Or, the silver lining, or any of those, right? All go to the
Exactly.
same thing, that growth mindset, that you look at something that you might think of as a problem and instead turn it into a challenge, an opportunity for growth, something, right? And that's what we're talking about, accountability, looking for those opportunities when repeat patterns happen to go, I've been around this circle a few times.
Yeah. Do we want to get off the merry-go-round?
Yeah. So merry-go-round, I want to get off. I want to learn a lesson and go to the next ride, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was a similar thing with me in grade 9 with the principal and vice principal sat me down in the library, those bar stools, the tall round table, and said, "We don't think you should take the sciences. We think the secretarial route would be better for you."
See?
And
It was the time we were raised.
yeah, it was. And also, but the meaning I made from that was that I was dumb. And not until I went to college as a mature student and then went to university and then transferred to New Mexico State University for a year and then came back to Canada and graduating on the dean's list with distinction and having honors at New Mexico and my home university here. Through a counselor did I realize that I was smart. What would happen if I did the work? Because what I'd do is, like, the night before a paper would be due, I'd have like 6 books open on my floor and some Skittles to keep me awake. And my cat would play with the Skittles and I'd bat her paw and she'd bat me back. And when you have a cat bat you back, you understand why they can leap and fall and do all the things that they can do because they've got so much strength, tensile tension, strength in their.
Oh, they do.
But I would like pull a sentence out of this book and a sentence out of this one and over this one and this one. And I'd smoosh it all together and turn in an essay that would get fairly good grades. And when this college counselor was saying, "Well, what kind of grades are you getting?" When I'm falling apart in her office because I've had the worst waitressing night of my life. Clearly I cannot be a queer waitress. And I'm really, I'm just having fun at school. I don't know what I'm going to do with this stuff because I'm not smart, right? I'm not saying that consciously, but that's in my head. And she says, "What kind of grades are you getting?" And she starts at the bottom that would just be passing. I went, "No," I'm offended, right? And then she says the next grade, like it was on a 9 stay 9 system at that point, that college. And I went, "No." And then she went the next one, and that was just slightly above average. I went, "Yeah, but what? I don't really like the professor that much." Any 7s, yes. Any 8s, yes. Any 9s. I'm smart. What would happen if I did the work, if I did the reading ahead of time, if I studied ahead of time for the exams, if I actually took more time than an evening to cram sentences together for an essay? Graduating with distinction on the dean's list and with honors from NMSU.
Yeah, it really is what you choose, right? That was a choice. You made a choice to then say, maybe I am smart. What if, right? What if I did this? And I love that. That is one of my favorite questions for clients, right? What if? What would be possible if?
Yeah. There's a great book by my favorite author, Martha, Dorothea Brand. She's got 2. One is Becoming a Writer, and it's 1937 copyright. And it is the best book on writing that I have found out there. I love it. You just have to transpose some of the archaic language for modern, but it's so good. And she's got another book, Wake Up. What would you do if it were impossible to fail? You'd love the book.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. I love that. I'll add that to my reading list.
Yeah.
I love adding books to my reading list.
I know, I've got a
Yeah.
big
Amazon account, right? The box. My husband's like, where are we putting those? I have no idea. I don't know. Bookcases are full, but I'm sure we could buy another one and shove it somewhere, dear.
Oh, I'm sure.
Right?
There's always room for more books, right?
There's
And
all
yeah.
right,
Pile them vertically.
right. I have a stack of those vertical books. Yeah, we have them everywhere. In every crevice, we have books. It's my favorite thing. Oh,
Mhm.
Rusty, this has been amazing. Accountability, taking personal accountability for your own stuff, for your life, right? Taking control of your own life and learning and growing and taking that accountability really is the key to our human existence, right? To the experience that we are having here. It really is the key to it all.
Yes.
Love and that.
Yeah.
Love.
Yeah,
Whatever,
because,
right?
when we're accountable, we can love ourselves. We're not hiding anymore our secret, shame or our shadows that we're dragging in a bag behind us. When we take those shadows out of the bag and start loving them, and that's accountability. Because the first 20 years of our life, we stick all the things in the bag that we think other people don't like or that is not acceptable.
Yes.
And then the rest of our lives, we're dragging them out, making friends with some of them, and that's accountability too, doing shadow work.
Yeah, I love that. So you guys, we're getting really close to time. So Rusty, any last thoughts or anything that was left unsaid that you want to say?
Well, if you haven't ever tried writing, if you've got something that's bothering you in your life, just open up a journal and trust that first draft, write it out. And if you don't want anybody to read it, but you still want to benefit from it, then do this one trick that this one morning pages writer does is she does 3 pages, but on the same page, writing over and over and over the lines. So nobody can read it after, but you've gotten it out of your system and you will still benefit from putting it out on the page. Because when I was making the decision to leave that one man that my son is now idolizing, I wrote to 2 friends to keep myself accountable and aware because there were several things that were too good to leave and there were several things that were too bad to stay. That's the title of a book, by the way. And I had to keep myself awake and aware or I could slide into the too good to leave category and not be balancing out to see where it was that I needed to land, this side or this side. A journal can be your very best friend, your confidant, cheapest form of therapy.
Yeah, it's true. I have journaled when I don't want someone to read it, just so you know, I burn it because the energy of fire takes it
Yeah.
away, which I love. So I like to set things on fire in a
Ooh,
safe way. Just saying,
in a safe way. Yeah. Yeah.
safely. You guys, I love that. So if you have something that you need accountability for, you're looking at something in your life where you're like, what is going on? Write. Take a page from Rusty's book and write it, journal it out. And
Yeah.
you can reach Rusty at rustilehay.info, which is RUSTILEHAY.INFO. Email her, ask her questions, meet with her, whatever you want to do. She's a book coach and editor, and she's amazingly safe. She creates an amazingly safe space. So this has been Courageously You with Martha. I'm Martha Davis Alexander. You can reach me at marthadalexander@gmail.com. That's MarthaDalexander at gmail.com, or you can look at my website at courageouslyoucoaching.com. If you've tried and it was down last week, it's back up now. And or you can reach me by phone or text 805-422-6865. Remember, we will be back here next week. I will be back here next week at exactly the same time, 3 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Central, and 6 p.m. Eastern on the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. And final word is always for me, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is finding it within you to do something, even in the face of the fear that you or the discomfort you have. So you guys gather your courage, have courage to be accountable, have courage to write your thoughts down in a journal. Be safe, be happy, be courageous, people. Bye-bye. Till next week.